Hi, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to tell you that I am watching people join this call and then you're disappearing off my screen. So I have a few people who have stayed on. So I've got two planks, Sarah, Joan, Russ, Nikki, Claire, Marcus. I've got like 8 people. So if I don't see you putting your hand up, it's because I cannot physically see you on the screen. I'm not sure why that's happening, but we'll just deal with it. So I wanted to really address everything that I've been throwing out for the last couple of weeks. We've done a lot of quite deep research, and I've been looking at fertility, all sorts of medical issues that people are having, so preemie babies, not being able to get pregnant, stuff like that. And I suddenly thought last week about the connection with calcium. Was there a connection with calcium signaling and babies being born early, or even sperm not being able to get to the egg to make a baby because there was either too much calcium or not enough, or it was in the wrong place. So I did a little bit of very quick research on everything that I've been looking at, and it transpired that incorrect calcium signaling, and often to do with an overload of calcium, was actually able to trigger premature birth. So by just signaling that the body was ready to have a baby when it really wasn't. And we know that this is all tied in with the arsenic picture now, because I did another article just a couple of days ago, and that looked at exactly how calcium was affecting our neurons. So neurons are the cells that take a signal from our brain to our hand to do something and back again from our hand. So once we picked a pen up, we can feel it in our hand and we want to do something with it. So a relay of signals is going backwards and forwards to our brain, telling us what our hand needs to be doing. And that is all controlled by sodium and calcium. And the problem we have is that we know arsenic is in the air. We know that people have had it in their hair tests, blood tests, urine tests. It's been in dust tests. And what that does, and this takes a little bit of digging again, is that it attaches to things called disulfide bridges. And these are 2 little sulfur molecules in cells. And I thought, well, maybe all of those channels that let calcium in and out of the cells have a disulfide bridge, and perhaps they're being interfered with. And lo and behold, all the calcium channels are with a disulfide bridge. And I think the sodium is as well. So basically, all your signaling is messed up. So it can be in the right order. When you take in excess calcium, more calcium than should be getting into your cells is getting into your cells, because the gate is wide open to all your cells. We are, as a human race, I don't think we're meant to have quite as much calcium in our cells as we have. And what is happening, because these gates are wide open, the body is panicking and it is shoving all of that calcium into the mitochondria. And as we all know, COVID and many other illnesses reduce our level of energy. They make us feel really tired, unable to move, CFS, so chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, all of these illnesses, Guillain-Barré syndrome, all of those tiredness-related illnesses, plus all the other illnesses that make you feel really tired. You're feeling tired because you have so much calcium in your mitochondria, you can't make energy. The other thing that arsenic does is that it mimics phosphate. And phosphate, so it looks exactly, arsenate looks exactly like phosphate, but it just can't do any of the jobs. And phosphate, if you know how the citric acid cycle works and the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria, you use phosphate at every single point to make energy. So what's happening now is we have got no phosphate, and we are relying on basically nervous energy. This is what nervous energy is the calcium firing incorrectly. We are relying on nervous energy to do everything throughout the day. We don't have proper energy. Proper energy comes from phosphate, not from calcium, nervous energy. So the phosphate, this is where the Coke comes in. Phosphoric acid has a phosphate body and it has 3 hydrogens on the end. And that is able to bind to the calcium carbonate that is being, number one, put in the air, undoubtedly, and also is being put in all our flour and a lot of other foods that we're not looking at, and calcium in other forms. So basically your phosphoric acid from the Coke, and it seems to be one of the few drinks that has this in the UK. The other one is Dr. Pepper, and I think there are a few others. So if anybody knows of anything with phosphoric acid in, please let us know, because that will be incredibly useful. I'm going to be inviting some people to speak. But I just wanted to get this out because I'd like to find out how people are coping at the moment, especially with this last phase of attacks. So we are severely deficient in phosphate, guys. But because they're putting calcium and iron in the flour, it's kind of counteracting the fact that there is natural phosphate in the flour. So there's no point in eating that, because you're just going to add to your calcium store and make yourself sicker. This is something one of my children said. They said, I can't have lots of cheese in a sandwich, Mummy, because it makes me feel sick. And they feel sick because they're getting, obviously, cheese has a lot of calcium in it. I think 30 grams has a ridiculous amount. I mean, 222 milligrams, I think. And then if you have 100 grams worth of flour in your bread, so that's about 3 slices, you're getting 455 milligrams of calcium, which is an insane amount. The iron is much, much, much lower, obviously, because that would do us visible harm. But the calcium is just in silly amounts. So I wanted to hand over to one of the 3 people who've accepted a speaker invite to just let us know a little bit about how your experiment with reducing or removing calcium and introducing something like Coke that has phosphoric acid in have been coping. Elle, tell me.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Well, like I've said a few times, actually, the last 3 weeks is probably the best I've felt for a very long time. I started having little drinks of Coca-Cola and some ham, and cutting out the bread and things, and being a bit more mindful of the calcium intake. And yeah, having everything that I've gone through over the last 4 years, and like my sort of slow recovery since March this year, kind of being on the protocols that you and your people have suggested, it's quite nice to feel normal for a change. And
I know it's been a bit of a rough ride for you, hasn't it, Elle? Because you spend a lot of time outside, so you're exposed all the time to whatever they're throwing at us.
Yeah, so I bought some disposable anti-pollution PM 2.5 masks. So, when I've looked at I check the windy site every morning and have a little look, and if it's looking a bit grim for I'll either wear the mask or sort of like spend 10 minutes and go back later on when things have cleared up a bit. But we will see. It's literally for every November, December for the last 4 years. It's around that time that I've gone downhill for months. And it is like you talking about the tiredness. Last Christmas I was hit with chronic fatigue over Christmas, and I spent most of it just I had nothing in me, no energy at all. So this winter will be my test, going into it, being mindful of what you're saying, what I'm eating. So fingers crossed. I had one little blip last week. I had a couple of days where the neuropathy in my feet kind of kicked off a bit, so I just rested then. But I seem to bounce back from that very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Elle? So I just wanted to add to that because obviously there is this additional added metal in our food, but there is also a lot coming in from above. So we've had this very oppressive blanket of cloud over us, but we have been getting a lot of signaling saying that we are being exposed to things like calcium, I think titanium, cesium, arsenic, and technetium, which is actually a product of radioactive, and the cesium as well, radioactive processes in nuclear power stations. So we have definitely been exposed to quite a lot over the last period since this cloud has been hanging over Britain and a lot of Europe. And I do believe that America also had a very similar cloud, but they've just come out of that. And of course, as soon as the cloud moves on, we get more gas, Elle. So it is a constant battle keeping our levels of phosphate up. And this is why I talk about the Coke. Obviously, we want to try and get as natural sources of phosphate as possible. So meat and eggs at the moment probably are the best sources for you, because obviously our grains are contaminated. And so, yes, yesterday I had chicken and egg for dinner, and I felt a lot better afterwards. I was surprised how much better I felt. So Coke, the phosphoric acid in these drinks is not necessarily going to be the be all and end all, but it is a great boost for your levels of phosphate whilst we're trying to rebuild them. And the other great thing is that when you load up on your phosphate, and you are not leaving any room for the arsenate to settle in, which means that you don't lose any calcium when these lightning storms come, or when you get a shock, or when there's a lot of heat. So all of these things where pressure changes are involved will, if your cell structure isn't absolutely as it should be, your phosphate and your bone structure with calcium isn't as it should be in that beautiful star shape, you're missing those minerals, the phosphate minerals. If you don't have those, then when you are exposed to pressure, then you're going to have problems. So not only are you going to lose some bone, but you have that big flood of calcium into your bloodstream. And the thing that calcium does, because it's clearly out of control, we have no control over our calcium while we have no phosphate and while we have arsenate in our body. It kind of flies around telling the pancreas to make insulin when it shouldn't be making insulin. It causes blood clots. It gives you migraines. It just is an insane chemical to have on the loose in your body. You do not want calcium on the loose in your body. You need to control it. So the best sources for calcium, and these are, just a normal level of calcium, would be from meat and eggs. And actually, if you notice, with an egg, the shell is made of calcium. So it's pushed all of the calcium to the outside of the egg. It doesn't really need an awful lot of calcium to be a growing chick inside that egg. There's a reason for that. So calcium is, we need it. Of course, we need it to build our bones. A lot of people don't know that it's not a mineral. It is a metal, and it is highly reactive with water. And we are made of 70% water. And so if it is on the loose, it is splitting water all over the place, causing reactive oxygen species, breaking cells. It just behaves like a hooligan in a bar, smashing everything up. I think that's probably the best way of describing it. Jill, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Hi. I hope
How are you?
everyone's well. I'm good, not bad at all. I've just written down some quick questions, but I'd just like to say, I think I had a sort of COVID type thing from flying. I went on holiday, came back, and basically had COVID. I didn't test it, but it was all the symptoms and a lot of rundownness, etc. Better now, which is good. I just wanted to say what works for me. So I'm finding the Coke. I found the no sugar, no caffeine Coke in the supermarket, and it's going really well, making me feel a lot better. In addition to the ALA and the taurine, I also find magnesium really works well. I'm going to experiment with magnesium L-threonate. Supposed to be a good one, so I'm going to try that. I'm interested. Yeah, it was interesting, Elle, you were saying October and November, because actually just made me realize for the last 3 years, October and November, I felt really bad for kind of almost a whole month. And I was putting it down to other things, but I wonder whether it's something to do with what's going on at the moment, whether they up the ante in October and November. I don't know. So that's quite interesting. I'm interested in any alternatives to bread and oats, because I actually kind of consume quite a lot of that. Is there anything else we can have which hasn't got the calcium in it?
Scots have a problem with B12.
Being a Scot, yes.
Problem. And I wonder if that is connected to oats, because oats are really unusual grain.
Yeah.
They come kind of liquid, don't they? And if you've got a damaged gut, it will just literally take everything right through the gut into the bloodstream. And it is, oats are high in iron and they're high in calcium. So you're kind of outing those two. So definitely I would say, and I made this mistake as well, Jill. I thought they were fine.
Healthy,
and then I was piling on the weight. I wasn't getting any better. And I was just like, what on earth? So I removed those. So I totally agree. Where did you fly to, by the way, on holiday?
I went to Greece, so Kalamata, which is sort of Greek mainland. When was that? 12th to the 19th. So I came back on the 19th.
Okay. So lightning has been almost constant over the Mediterranean. And over Central Europe. So I think that undoubtedly you will have been affected by that on your flight. But also bear in mind that if we have weak cells because we're losing phosphate, then any kind of pressure change up and down in a plane is going to affect you in the same way as if you were diving or getting, flying a very fast plane. Or even going on a ride on a fairground. That kind of pressure would influence. So in terms of alternatives, I think also we've been talking about sugar as well being the big bogeyman. It actually is not the bogeyman, because sugar has an amazing ability to wrap up chemicals and metals that are harmful for our body. If we cut sugar, we have nothing to protect ourselves with. So, any kind of sensible fruit-based sugars. I'm also having a calcium-free chocolate as well. Anything like that would be
Sounds good.
suitable. Anything potato-based as well.
Oh,
But
okay.
I've noticed that Genius bread has all of the additions, even though it's gluten-free.
Oh, yeah.
It's still, so there are some brands that have still added all of this stuff in.
Yeah. Okay.
So Genius is one, Dove's is another, which is a real disappointment. European brands, you have to hunt for them. I'm not going to name them because I don't want people going and interfering. You go and hunt for the European brands, you'll know which ones I mean. Just look at the labels and learn which ones those are. And that hopefully will be a good alternative for you. I've just gone back to the brands that we were having for gluten-free. My children were like, no, don't take the gluten away from me. I said, I'm not going to take all the gluten. I'm just going to take the stuff with the added inorganic metal. So what I'm saying is, guys, when you've got a leaky gut, which we all do right now, all of us, even the kids, when you've got a leaky gut, if you put raw metal in your body, it's just going to fly right into your bloodstream.
Got you.
The body cannot cope with raw metal. So all the supplements, all the medications, everything, go ask your doctor for alternatives without added calcium and metal in. You know, things like a phosphate-based drug are fine. Anything oxygen, hydrogen, that kind of drug is fine. Chloride is also useful because that can kind of keep potassium and sodium in the right place.
So that's chloride as opposed to chlorine, different.
Yeah, chloride atoms. It's well, you know, obviously I'm not a doctor, still, but from what we can tell, that, you know, some of these things are very useful. So anything that contains a metal.
Just a quick addition to that last comment. By contains a metal, I mean that the metal is held in a container of some description. It's usually a molecule that will then protect the body from the raw metal.
Is very useful. So, for example, we found out that antibiotics are able to chelate iron and also calcium, which is why we feel better when we've had them.
Yep. Okay.
And our tummies get a bit upset, but that's because it all has to go out somewhere, and it goes out through the tummy. Don't worry about the bacteria. The bacteria will settle themselves eventually. You know, the less we fiddle with our bodies, the better. All we need to do is take out the stuff that we don't need and put in the stuff that we really, really do need. And what we do need at the moment is phosphate. Taurine is a really, really good one. And I hadn't understood how it worked, but somebody, I think it was Annette who told me, thank you, Annette, is that it stops calcium getting into the cell. It does something, I think it might cleave arsenic from the calcium channel, which then allows the calcium channel to close appropriately. I think that might be how it works. So thanks, Jill, for those questions.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Just one more question. So I've been monitoring NO2 and it's been quite strong. Yeah. Obviously. Masks. Do you think they help?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's worth getting just the cheapo throwaway ones that we're using.
I think or a scarf or a snood or anything like that. Just bear in mind that when you go, just try not to put it up again. You know, you'll have to keep changing them, washing
get rid of them
to get rid of the stuff. But yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I was going out with a scarf. I mean, I'm stupid. I don't replace it. I was really stupid the other day. Actually, I went to work and do an article in a cafe and then completely forgot that, you know, they've got air conditioning.
Oh my God, yeah.
Stuff. And then I felt dreadful by the end of the day, even though I was cutting out calcium. So I feel a lot better staying at home, staying inside. I have my rest days are the weekend where I don't expose myself to anything. Yeah. And I feel a lot better, and that kind of sets me up for the week. Okay. Right, Nicole.
Good. Thank you.
Going to speak. No problem.
That's great.
Jill.
Thank you.
Hi, Caroline. Sorry about that earlier.
Oh, no worries. Go for it.
Well, actually, I don't really know what to add to what you've already said, but because I agree with everything really, and just from my own personal experience with Coke, I was a die-hard no Coke fan. Like, honestly, if you had told me a few weeks ago even that I would be drinking Coke in any form, I would have said, "Oh, don't be silly." But I really have tried it, and it has helped, especially with things like I get very sort of itchy patches of skin on my chest and my forehead, and I couldn't figure out what was causing this. I had tried everything. I use sort of very natural skin products anyway. My food consumption is very low sugar, very no gluten, but it was cheese that I was sort of eating still, and certain food products I hadn't been aware of that I was adding calcium to my diet, and completely unaware of it. I used to read food labels and see the calcium carbonate in it and just think, oh, well, that's good. I'm getting my calcium. I'm getting my calcium. So even if I'm really sort of strict and healthy in my eating, at least I'm getting my calcium. So I cut down on the cheese and added the Coke, and my skin is unbelievably better compared to what it was. And I really, those two things together, I wish I had just tried taking the cheese away, or the added calcium away first to see. But I think that it would have probably had an effect, but maybe a slower effect, but definitely adding the phosphoric acid and the Coke. And I've tried all of them, the normal Coke, the full fat Coke, the Diet Coke, the caffeine. I've got them all. I just rotate them.
That's so funny. Yeah, I've got a selection of drinks as well that I use for different things.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't really mind the taste of the aspartame. I know people are a bit, oh, it's got the aspartame in it and that's bad for you. And I'm like, well, I don't know. You have to try and help yourself really in any which way you can. So this is my way of doing it. Everyone is individual and we all have to do what's best for us. But the other thing I have found actually in the last couple of weeks, which I didn't realize until probably yesterday, was that I usually suffer with very cold hands and feet. And but at night in bed, I get very hot. So even in winter, I have the fan going. My husband completely hates it because he just can't understand it. But so cold hands and feet, but hot in bed. But this has changed definitely over the last, I think maybe the last particularly week. And I recently looked up the role of calcium in thermoregulation. And it does have a significant impact on it. If it's unchecked or unbalanced or excess, it definitely can affect your thermoregulation of your body. So maybe hot flushes and things like that can be contributed towards excess calcium in the body. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor. I'm learning like everyone else as we go along, trying to mitigate, trying to limit, trying to rewire my brain, because I also didn't realize until recently that calcium was a metal. I just thought, it's white. It must be not a metal. So it all makes a bit more sense to me now that it is a metal and how reactive it is to other things in our bodies.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nicole, for that. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just going to address some of the things that you mentioned there. One is aspartame. Aspartame is made from two parts of two different amino acids, and amino acids are natural to our body. It has been tested over and over and over and over again for safety, and it has been found to be safe. There is a lot of conjecture going around on the internet saying that it is unsafe. It has not been proven to be unsafe, and so far we're still alive. So When I was very young, I studied in Italy, in Padova, and I got very ill. I had glandular fever, but I didn't know it was that. And obviously everybody said, oh, you've been kissing disease, which is rubbish, because at the same time, I remember walking into class one day. Padova's a beautiful city, if you've ever been there. Walking into class, and it was foggy. And we came out of class. I was with an American friend of mine, and I was practically asleep walking in this fog. I was so asleep, I nearly got run over. And he had to kind of pull me back from being run over by a car. So I lived on Diet Coke that whole year. And I was super fit by the end. I was so unwell, terrible tonsillitis, really, really poorly, and literally spent 2 weeks sleeping, couldn't eat at all. But by the next summer, on this diet of Italian food and Diet Coke, I managed to play a tournament of volleyball, which is just unheard of for me. So clearly it wasn't hurting me at all. So that was one thing I wanted to say. So please don't panic about aspartame. And the other one with I can't remember what acesulfame K, I believe that's got sulfur in it, and it's also got potassium, and that is potentially useful for removing arsenic and replacing potassium. What happens, so this was the other thing about the heat, Nicole, was that when our cells break because we come under attack from arsenic, or we have a bit of lightning, or we go on a plane and the pressure changes and we lose a load of cells, a lot of contents of the cells spill out, don't they? So you get iron will be flying around, calcium will be flying around, and so will potassium and sodium. Now, potassium and sodium leave the body really quickly. You'll know when you've been exposed to something toxic, because you will need to go for a pee like every 2 seconds, and gallons of water will come out. And you might also find this as you're detoxing from calcium and added calcium and iron. The problem with calcium is that it has a much longer half-life, and it doesn't the body tends to kind of hold on to it in a way that it's not held on to. The potassium and sodium aren't held on to. So what we are basically sequestering all of this calcium into the organelles and the mitochondria in our cells. So those organelles and the mitochondria can't work properly. And God knows what happens to our DNA when we're exposed to lightning, when we have this highly reactive metal in high amounts in our cells. So how long it's going to take to get these levels back to normal, I don't know. But bear in mind, when you have a blood test, so say you go to or you call the doctor and you say, I don't feel very well, and they say, come and see me in 5 days' time. Okay, so that's probably about all we can do at the moment. Or you might get an emergency appointment, but they won't be able to do the blood test there and then. They might send you to the hospital, or they might get you to book an appointment with the nurse for a blood test in 5 days' time. The problem with that is, number one, you cannot see exactly what is happening in your blood at that point in time. So by the time you've had your blood test, none of what was causing the problem will be in the blood. It will all be hidden away in your cells, and you won't be able to see it. So you will still feel unwell, but the doctor won't have a clue why. Not one clue. So phlebotomy just won't give you the answer. The only way, and you will know this if you're celiac or if you have any intolerance to foods, you'll know that the only way to reliably tell what is causing an issue is by cutting it out of the diet. This is a standard elimination diet. It is the gold standard for testing. on tolerances with food. But from what we can tell, the first place to start looking is with these added metals. Here's us all chasing after these foods that might be high in arsenic. Yes, wheat might be higher in arsenic than other foods. Lettuce, for example, we always seem to get E. coli from lettuce. I'm saying E. coli in inverted commas there, because it is full of water, and arsenic is water soluble. All of those metals that are added to our sky and rained down on us, if you've noticed, it hasn't rained much at all, and there's a reason for that, because otherwise it makes the ground very toxic. All of those metals that land on our soil are then sucked up by the plants. And in a paper that I read, written by an organization that did it for the government quite some years ago, they discovered that plants or crops grown in a known high arsenic area of southwest England were showing high in arsenic, but it wasn't organic arsenic, it was inorganic. So arsenate and arsenite were both high in the vegetables. And here's another tip: if you get a potato, much like us humans, all the toxins get pushed to the outside. So peel all your vegetables and your fruit, because then you're taking off most of the excess of those metals that you don't really want to eat. Elle, have you got anything else to add?
Hi there. Yeah, just picking up something that the lady who was talking about calcium and thermoregulation. That's definitely something that I've experienced. I was always like a cold hands and feet person in the winter, and like the last 4 winters I've slept on top of the duvet, and now sort of like my fingertips, even the slightest chill in the air, my fingertips are red raw. Don't know if menopause is playing a part on that. I still don't class myself as ever having had a hot flash at all yet. I would definitely agree that like my thermoregulation has completely changed since March 2020. I did come across something. You were talking about other drinks that might have phosphoric acid in it. I did come across something that I was reading. The Indian tonic water did come up.
Indian tonic water is really useful as well. I've actually been drinking a combination of Coke and so full fat Coke and then diet tonic water. So I'm reducing my sugar a little bit just so I don't get terrible teeth. But actually, we can talk about teeth in a minute. But basically, quinine is known to bind metal as well. So when you're adding, so what you're doing is if you put those two together, you're binding calcium and iron. Generally, it's iron 3 and calcium 2. Those are the primary ones, and then it goes down the scale. And then you're adding the phosphate at the same time. So you're kind of, as a double whammy, it's quite a good recipe, I would say, a good drink to have in the evenings to go to sleep on. But yeah, for sure. And things like, I mean, we've noticed things like our hair getting better, our nails getting better, skin. Nicole mentioned, my God, some of our group have had terrible skin. I've had bad skin. My hands were splitting and bleeding, and I just couldn't stop it. I had these kind of lesions all over my knuckles. I'd seen these on a family member many, many years ago. And I just couldn't understand what was going on. I thought he was a bit strange. But then I started developing them and I was like, oh my God, I've got the same thing. But since I've taken the calcium out, my skin is healed. It's literally healed. Don't get me wrong, detoxing all the calcium, it is hard work when you've got stuff coming from the sky. It's difficult to tell what is the detox and what is the sky, and that can kind of set you back a little bit if you get exposed too much. But definitely keeping the bowels moving is really important, because calcium tends to be excreted through the feces more than it does through the urine. So it's about 20% through the urine, and then the rest is feces, which is probably why it takes so long to get out of the body. So I'm going to pass. Annette, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, hello everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the taurine a little bit, because one of the things that shocked me to the core was the effect of our brains. Because I hear a lot of people, brain fog is one thing, but actually they feel they've got cognitive decline. And the other day we talked about, the particles, how they actually can access straight in through our brain, through our nose. And I just thought, oh my goodness, yes, mask is good, but we have to look at, or I wanted to look at more, how do we mitigate this? So taurine came up again, and is actually linked to excitotoxicity. And that goes with how the calcium fires, the neurons go ping, ping, ping. And like you said, we might feel great, but it's not so great, the end result. So for those who are taking taurine, great. If anyone wants to look into it, it's quite a lot of information out there, how it has neuroprotective abilities as well. So we've used it before for the arsenic, so it seems like it's one that's a good all-rounder for both, actually, both the arsenic and the calcium.
Can I just add, Annette, do check all of your supplements when you're buying. Make sure it doesn't have a calcium filler. Please make sure it doesn't have a calcium filler, because then you're just, we did, didn't we? Mm-hmm. I looked at all of the supplements we were taking of taurine and ALA, and they all had it in, even though we didn't necessarily want that. I kind of had a niggle in the back of my head about, because so many of the hair results had come back with high calcium. I was just like, what is this? I just thought maybe it's just because so many cells are breaking. But no, it's because we are completely overloaded with calcium.
Yeah, I thought I was doing great. But then in the evening, adding magnesium glycinate, and it had 2 tablets, had 120 milligram of calcium. So that's what I went to bed on. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. I added up the other day just a standard diet, British diet. Not an unhealthy one, just a few slices of bread, maybe a biscuit or 2, a bit of cheese, some milk, and obviously natural calcium is far, far better than inorganic calcium in baked goods. But you still need to watch out, as we are already overloaded. If you want to reduce your levels, if you keep adding, it's just going to keep compounding the problem. So sometimes it's better just to get that minimal amount from, say, meat and eggs, and reduce it right back. Taper as well. Tapering is really important. Don't just suddenly stop everything like I do, because then you run into problems. Taper off slowly. Take a week to get it out of your diet. Make sure that your bowel is moving. Drink, these drinks that we're talking about. Also, water, bottled water, has often got bicarbonate in it and calcium. Make sure your calcium is no higher than 17 milligrams per litre. Make sure your bicarbonate is not over 50 milligrams per litre, because then so the pH needs to be around 7 or even under 7, because then what that does is it starts to bind together those metals in the gut and takes them out. So I don't know how that works, but basically the more acidic water is, you don't want to have super acid water, but kind of a 6.7 is about right. If you drink a glass of water of that kind of pH, 6.7, you will get the urge to go to the loo. And that is because it just starts to stimulate that action of the metals in the gut. Is that something that you would back up, Annette?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to ask you your thoughts on distilled water, because I started drinking bottled water again, and it was basically due to the electricity cost. Actually, I was thinking cost. I've gone back to it now. Just remembering when I first started distilling, reading articles, wondering, is this a good idea? Because it actually does take everything out. And I see that in the amount of times in the week I have to descale the container of this distilled. So in my mind, I just feel, peace of mind that I'm not adding any calcium through there.
Yeah. I found it quite drying. I found it a bit too drying, I have to say.
Yeah.
So it was like it was drawing too much out. So I do prefer to go with a bottled water. And the other thing is that you cannot guarantee that it's going to get everything out. Only deionized water is properly, chemical free or metal free. But also distilling water in your home, it is putting a lot of the elements into the atmosphere. And if you already are inhaling them in the atmosphere, you don't want to add any more. So I would, if you are distilling, put your distiller somewhere where you're not breathing that air in.
Oh, yeah. And I've got a device that's a dehumidifier, but it also a filter, so it sort of clears the air. So I've got those two in the utility room. But I think maybe I'll just do a mix, a 50-50. Good point, actually, that it can be drying.
Yeah. So I think go with how it makes you feel. If, for example, so what's been happening with this water with huge amounts of calcium and bicarbonate in is that the bicarbonate is neutralizing our stomach acid, and it is allowing all of the toxins and metals through into our gut without any gatekeeping. So it's if you were to eat foods with that level of or water with that level of calcium and no bicarbonate of soda, you would have noticed it was hurting your tummy way before now. So in a way, it's like the bicarbonate is tricking you into believing that your digestion is good, that you are healthy, that you don't have any extra metal. But actually what it's doing is bicarbonate, I found out, is stripping your gut of phosphate, of the little phosphate that you have left that hasn't been moved by arsenate. It is stripping the rest out. It is making your gut like a sieve. And then all of the calcium and God knows what else that you're eating is going straight in without any gatekeeping into your bloodstream. So one really good way of telling if something is getting into your bloodstream quickly is by your heart racing. So if you eat something or you drink something and your heart starts racing, that is a sign. It doesn't matter if it's a low race, if it slightly changes. So people who do holistic health will know how to pulse check. They will know that the pulse changes when you have something that is getting into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And that's literally what's happening, is that everything is being stripped out by this awful water with way too much bicarbonate of soda, well over 50, sometimes into the 300, 400, 600, I think one bottle had in it, and then added calcium again. So I'm going to pass to Nicole. And if that's, oh no, I'm not. Actually, Nicole, I'll come to you in a minute. I'm going to pass to Caroline Cook, but she's been waiting a minute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Caroline. Yes, go for it.
Nothing more than the fact that I haven't run it deliberately, but I have two whippets, one of which will not eat anything but meat, and one of which will eat anything, but he eats lots of commercial dog biscuit and all-in-one dog food. And the one that eats the meat is the liveliest dog in England, and the one that doesn't is the laziest dog in England. So take from that what you will.
I think animals are very telling, aren't they? And why is the biscuit dog so unfriendly with meat?
Oh, it eats meat, I mean,
Yeah.
he eats everything. I mean, he'll eat dog poo. I mean, he is the greediest dog. He is revolting. He eats everything in sight. But if I put Biscuit down for the other one, he'll hoover it up. I tend to give him a bit less meat because he's such a pig. The other dog's very picky, and if I'm not careful, he'll have eaten all the other dog's food as well. I have to feed them in separate rooms. Yeah. But the dog that only eats meat is very, very lively. That is my only thoughts on it.
So the other option is just to remove all the dog biscuit from the house.
I'm going to. And to see what happens.
Watch the water that you're giving them. So if you're giving them tap water, I would just switch to a bottle so you know exactly how much.
It goes through I've got a zero filter, and I just filter everything through that.
Okay. So
I don't tend to be too paranoid because I have a digestion of iron, which is unusual because all my family have digestive problems, and I do not get ill. I mean, I did have COVID, but I mean, that was the last time I was actually ill. I just go through life. So I don't get paranoid about what I'm eating. I just eat. But I don't eat a lot of dairy. Apart from the fact I will eat cheese, but I'm not a great dairy eater. I don't drink gallons of milk.
Yeah.
But we do eat really healthy food, and my husband's recovering from bowel cancer, so we do tend to eat really healthy food. I don't have any processed food, but bread is my big concern because and flour, because you can't escape it.
Well, I think sometimes we just have to try. If you do look, some of the gluten-free bread is free of it, but you have to hunt.
Yeah, I mean,
as I said,
it's all got seed oil. There's nothing out there.
Don't worry about the seed oil at the moment. The thing at the moment is to get this stuff out of our diet.
I'm going to try the Coke.
What kind of
Coke? Because I am going to give it a try, and I'm going to get some Diet Coke because I quite like it. It's quite a nice drink to drink an evening. I get a spot about 6 o'clock where I'm on the prowl, and I think I have a glass of Coke.
Yeah. So I just want to explain the mechanism of why your dog seems addicted to biscuits. It's like a vicious cycle. What's happening is they're taking in the calcium with whatever flour is used or whatever is used in the grains or whatever in the biscuit. And have you looked at the ingredients? Because it might
the one that I get a Lidl premium one, and that is actually pretty good on rubbish. I mean, it's all in.
Does it have added calcium in it?
I will check. I just bought something else because I didn't go to Lidl. I couldn't face it. I just bought a top up, but I will try them without. They do have raw peppermints, and they do have lamb's hearts or bulloc's heart cut up. I mean, do feed them really well, but Frodo just...
Yeah. But you do have to look with dogs and ourselves and cats. We have to look at the fine print and just make sure that there is no added metal that they don't need. I mean, my dog had something called calcium something iodide, and he's had a swollen thyroid since I started him on this food, and I hadn't clicked. And I'm taking it out, and the thyroid is going down, which is incredible, really. But let me just explain, Caroline, if I can, about why the dog is addicted to the biscuit. The dog is feeling lethargic because there's obviously something in the biscuit that is not helping them in terms of energy. So it's affecting their mitochondria. So then they eat the biscuit, and I would like to think that there probably is calcium in there.
Probably. I'm going to walk out to the kitchen and have a look.
Yeah, and then what happens is they have the calcium in the biscuit, and they get this nervous energy boost from the reaction of the calcium kind of flying around doing things that it's not meant to. And then when they stop eating the calcium, they get the low again because they don't have that electrical energy created by the calcium. And so then they hunt out this immediate boost, which is, again, the biscuit with the calcium. So to take it out of the diet is going to take a while. You'll have to taper it carefully, like we will for ourselves, and just put in natural calcium-based foods. I wouldn't give dogs cheese.
I can't afford to feed my dog cheese.
No, I know, I will.
The only calcium this particular one has got is calcium iodate.
Yeah, that's the one. That's why. So, yeah, you need to knock that one on the head. That's the one my dog has. And that's why he's had a swollen thyroid. And thyroid, as we know, affects all our digestive functions.
Yeah, well, this dog will sleep literally 23 hours a day.
Yeah, so try phasing that out and just to go for the meat with nothing added. Nothing added. So, right, Nicole,
right.
I'm going to pass it to you. Thanks, Caroline. Nicole.
Thank you.
Annette, go for it while I'm trying to sort Nicole out.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, with the cheese, I went a little bit crazy and gave on the cheese for my dog. And since taking the cheese out completely and giving him ham instead or tidbits, he's not losing as much fur because he was really dropping a lot, unnormally a lot. So just on that cheese there. But anyway, wanted to say about everyone who's missing bread and searching and hunting. There is a website. I don't know if I should say it here, if they, you let me know on that one. But if you Google unfortified flour, there is a website who sells them, and we can make our own bread and rolls to get around it. Because after
great idea, Annette. Yeah, great idea.
So if you just Google, it's. Can I say the name, or should I refrain from that?
No, I wouldn't.
No, okay. Yeah, well, just Google unfortified flour for sale, and them or someone else will come up.
Fabulous. Yes, do hunt around. There are companies that do it. There is also an organization that wants natural bread. So I think definitely we should support them. I can't remember what they're called exactly, but they're in the UK. And I definitely think that I think if people in Europe don't seem to have the same problem, but it's worth them checking. Northern Europe possibly may have the same problem. And America for sure. Have a look at your bread there as well. Because it's only when we start comparing notes, when we realize which countries are effectively under attack. Because whoever is advising on the science on this clearly either doesn't know about the arsenic and the calcium kind of all being overloaded into our mitochondria, or they do know. So it is, I don't want to throw any aspersions at anybody, but we all need to get with the program when it comes to the chemistry of our bodies. Too much of anything is not good. If you cannot remove calcium and phosphate is flying out of your body at a great rate of knots, then you have to do something about it. You have to rebalance it. You cannot keep calcium in your body behaving in the bone if you don't have enough phosphate. Jill, go for it.
Hello. I suddenly remembered I meant to ask doggies, is there any supplements we can safely give them, like ALA, taurine, to get the arsenic out of the system? I'm trying to limit the amount of time we're outside, but I've got quite a young one, so she needs to be out, on long walks and stuff. Is there anything?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good question, actually. I have given ALA to my dog. He doesn't seem to have a problem with it, but obviously make sure it is just ALA and not anything else.
Yeah.
I think the one I've got has some spirulina and some magnesium. I don't think that is too much of an issue.
Okay.
But I haven't tried them on that one yet. But the taurine for sure is fine as long as it's clean.
Yeah.
So when you're getting supplements, make sure that they are just
pure,
not a million other things.
Yeah.
And certainly not extra metal.
Yeah.
Okay. Nicole, try again.
I just can I just say something else?
Oh, sorry, Jill.
I just checked. My dog food, I don't know what's it's got in it because I need to look up the website, but I just checked. I have some expensive treats for my dog called Fourth Glade, and they don't have anything nasty, no grains, grain-free. So I just thought I'd mention that point. If people want to give their dogs a treat, they are pretty good. They've got nothing nasty in them.
Fab, do you want to put that in the notes? And
I will
put up, some of the stuff that I've found as well. And Ness, I think you were up next.
Yeah, no, I did.
Excellent.
Regarding Jill's finding the forced clade, yes, I've got those for my dog. I drink a little bit of spirulina on my dog's food every now and again. Not a lot, just a little bit. And I actually have a vet who is trained in homeopathy. So he's advised on some homeopathy, not for everyday use. So maybe that's what someone wants to look into as well, because there is some that can help them with the sky poisoning, if we can call that, the arsenic and the metals that they get in.
Yeah, and it's very gentle, isn't it? So, I mean, you said to me yesterday, take some of the homeopathy that you had sent to me, and it did work. I also have added something called choline bitartrate. It's something I was using at the beginning of COVID, and I found that it actually stopped my lungs from burning. But it also is really useful for brain function. And what we've been finding all of this last couple of weeks is that our brains just weren't working at all. It's the fog was incredible, really, really hard to string thoughts together. We did a call yesterday for all our members on the Boom Review, and you're kind of we were going off at tangents about the Earth and the Sun and the planets and God knows what, and everybody was probably sitting there going, what on earth are they talking about? Because it's really hard to structure an argument when you cannot think straight, and when it's all completely foggy. I think it's been quite an enlightening session, and it would definitely be worth, even if you want to keep dairy in your diet, it's certainly worth cutting all the calcium out, apart from obviously meat and eggs, etc., for just 3 weeks. That's usually the period of time we do for an elimination diet. Again, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just what we are doing and what might be useful to other people. So cutting it out just for 3 weeks, and then slowly reintroducing, for example, you could test at that point. You could test a calcium supplement and see how your body reacts to it. And you might find that you have, I had something the other day, a very small kind of pudding. I used to use it for rehydration, and oh my goodness, my heart rate started to boom, and I really didn't feel well after just that one small pudding. It was very small. It was only under 100 grams. So shocking, really. Annette?
Yeah, I just want to add on to that, the cleaner our bodies are, the easier it is for us to gauge what is upsetting it. So I think we are on the right path here. The calcium was a big piece of the puzzle. So really, really glad you found that, Caroline.
It certainly made a big difference. I think what we were struggling with, we knew we were missing something, but we didn't know what it was. It was like we were hunting around. Something was still in there that we weren't able to control. We weren't able to stop something from having an effect on us, and we just didn't know what that something was. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining. This recording will be available. I will post the link everywhere else, because I think it has been incredibly useful to explain what we mean about the calcium and the Coke. It is a revelation to all of us, and really, to be honest, quite a bitter pill to swallow when it comes to realizing that some countries are giving this to people, to our kids, in bread and everything every day. And we wonder why everybody is sick, when along comes some more from the sky and it just tips us over the edge. So it's that high level of calcium in our body that is then tipped over the edge by calcium in the air and other chemicals that then makes everybody suddenly very, very sick. And this week and the last few weeks, people have clearly been very unwell across the board. Headaches, migraines in the US, in Australia, across Europe, but particularly in the UK and the US. So if you were ever wondering which countries are really the targets, we're it at the moment. We are it. So do pay attention. Ask your friends in other countries as well, because it's worth, I think some of the Northern European countries may also be struggling in the same way. But it's worth getting everybody to look at their labeling. The great thing about transparent labeling is that by law, companies have to put these things in their ingredients. And if you look on the ingredients, because they add to the wheat flour the calcium and the iron, they also add folic acid and niacin. I'm not saying those bad at all. And, you know, any kind of vitamin is a good thing, hopefully. But I can't pass judgment on those. I haven't studied them deeply enough. But because it's in the main ingredient, then in brackets, it has to have wheat flour, calcium, iron, and they are put in the order of how much there is. So in wheat flour, again, it is 455 milligrams per 100 grams of flour. That is just 3 pieces of bread. And then all the other calcium that you get from all the other sources during the day. So do that exercise. Have a look in your cupboards, see what you've got. Have a think about what you eat during the day and how much you've been taking in. We should not be losing calcium from our bodies. It should not. This is why our body holds on to it, because actually it's not really something that we should be losing. And when we do lose a lot of it, it comes out in the form of kidney stones and other crystals and other lumps and bumps. So gout, for example, has a lot of calcium in it. So look at all of those illnesses and find out, you know, COVID, for example, people with hypercalcemia. Hypercalcemia, again, to be diagnosed with hypercalcemia, you would need to be at the doctor on the day that you were feeling poorly, presenting with a high level of calcium. But the body, in order to keep your blood from clotting, sends all of that calcium to the cells. So when the doctor eventually does the blood test, it's not in there. So he can't see it. Nobody can see it. The only way you would be able to see it is by doing a biopsy. And that's a little bit too much, really, just to find out that you have too much calcium. So, yeah, we don't need as much as we are being given, for sure. And as soon as we've got too much in our cells, then we get bombarded with it, and that just tips everybody over the edge. Awful migraines people have had, really, you know, palpitations as well is another one that people have been getting a lot of. It took us ages to work out why that was happening. And again, it is all that signaling through the neurons that is all going wrong, because we have too much calcium and too much arsenic and arsenic in our bodies. So we need to work on getting rid of those. That's it from me for now. Thank you, everybody, for taking part and listening on Sunday. I thought I just had to come on and explain what I mean about all of these things. You find if you've upped your phosphate and you reduce your calcium, your hair will not fall out in the same way that it is. Your nails will improve, your skin will improve, your brain power will improve. Just balance your bodies out, guys. Make yourselves less toxic. All right. Have a wonderful Sunday. Take care.